Good morning, Year 2. So our fact of the day today is 3 times 5 is 15, or 3 sets of 5 equals 15. Now 15 is often the one in the 5 times table that people forget because doesn't sound like the pattern, does it? We're used to 20, 25, 30, 35. So sometimes people forget 15. So we've got a picture of 3 times 5, and then we've got a picture of 5 sets of 3 equals 15, and at the bottom here I've got an array for 5 times 3, so I want you to draw the array in your book. So use the squares to draw the array. So the inverse, which is what we use the array for, would be 15 divided into 3's equals 5. And so if I divide this into 3's, you can see the 5 3's, and if I divided the 15 into 5's, you will see that there are 3 of them. There's a 5, there's a 5, and there's a 5. So if we're going to do a mega fact, it's easier to think of it as in money. So 3 times 50p's, how much money would you have? It would be 150 pennies, or £1.50. So I might write that as if it's money as well. So 3 times 50p equals, let's do a pound sign, £1.50, because that's quite a useful fact to know. We can write that the other way around as well. And so it would be the same if it was 5 30s. 5 times 30 would be 150, and 30 times 5 would also be 150. So let's divide one of those. 150 divided into 3 would be 3 50s. 150 divided into 5 would be 30. There's 4 different ones, aren't there? Because you could also divide it into the 50s, and that would be 3. And you can also divide it into the 30s, and that will be 5. Shall we do one mega one? How challenging should we make it? Let's try 13 times 5. Now remember, you have to partition the 13. So we're going to work out 10 times 5 and add it to 3 times 5. So 10 5s are 50, and we know 3 5s are 15. So to get the answer to 13 times 5, you add those two together. So 5 and 0 be 5 1s, 5 and 1 be 6 10s, and it will be 65. So can you write those facts neatly into your book now? Our TRP for today is, can I compare, estimate and measure weight? And remember, the other word for weight was mass. Now yesterday we looked at measuring length. Today we're going to look at mass or weight. And if you look at the picture here, this is inspired from the story Hand of Surprise. Because when we were reading the book last year, we were thinking, I wonder how heavy that would be to actually put on your head. So if you had a basket with all those 7 fruits in, I wonder what it would really weigh and how difficult it would be to carry that weight on your head. So we've got most of the fruits from the story in this picture. I think we had to swap one because usually we have the real fruits in the classroom and we can never get one of them. I think it's the guava we can never get, so we get a papaya instead because that's a similar size. So just looking at these fruits, you might already be able to sort of guess which one you think is the heaviest and maybe which one you think is the lightest. The first way you can compare weight is actually have it in your hand. So you could put one fruit on one hand, like the pineapple, and maybe put the passion fruit on the other and just compare them like a balance. So if we're looking at these fruits in the pictures, you can sort of look at their sizes as well. I think most people would assume that the passion fruit is the lightest and the pineapple is the heaviest. So in the middle we've got our crocodile sign. So remember, the crocodile always eats what's biggest, and that also applies to weight and length. It always eats the biggest one, so in this case it's the heaviest one. So I think we can predict that the pineapple is definitely heavier than the passion fruits. But when you get to some of the middle ones that are a similar size, like maybe that's a mango, I think that's a papaya, it gets a lot more difficult. So unless you had a proper balance, a proper set of balances, it's hard just holding them in your hands, knowing which one's heaviest and which one's lightest. But we can make an estimate, we can predict. So I'm going to predict that that one's probably the lightest. Then maybe the banana, that's quite small, isn't it? Then it gets tricky. Avocado, orange. It depends how big the orange is, isn't it? And how big the avocado is. Then maybe papaya. Now I know mangoes are really heavy because they're full of juice, watery juice, and that is quite heavy. And then definitely pineapples are heavy. So that's my estimate, my prediction for the lightest all the way up to the heaviest. But if you do it like that, you don't know how much heavier one is than the other. You know that the pineapple's a lot heavier than the passion fruit, but you don't know how much heavier. So to actually compare them accurately, we need to use a set of scales. These are some of the scales that we use at school, and the units of measurement that we measure weight and mass in are grams and kilograms. 1,000 grams equals 1 kilogram. So you could write that in your book actually, just like you did with the centimetres and the metre. Now on these scales, the grams and kilograms around the outside. You often hear people talking about things like pounds and ounces as well, but we're not using those, we're using the kilograms and the grams. So on these scales, that's 1 kilogram, that's 2 kilograms, and that's 3 kilograms. When we did the activity in school, the children had to guess, they had to estimate, remember that's a sensible guess, the weight in grams of all of the different fruits. So they were allowed to pick them up first and have a sort of look at them and pass them round, but they weren't allowed the scales. So they had to predict the different weights for those items. After we'd done that, we then weighed them in grams. Now I'm not expecting anyone to have pineapples and guavas and things at home. So what we're going to have to do is choose some things to estimate from your house. Now it could be fruit, it could be other things. If you've got scales in your house, you need to look at them first, so you don't choose things that are crazily heavy. It could be toys, so it's got to be something that will fit in the scales, first of all. Something that's not too heavy and not too light, because sometimes if something's just a couple of grams, it won't even show up on the scales. So if you think about the weight of fruits, you need things that are similar to those weights. These are some fruits that I've found in my house. Now remember, it doesn't have to be fruit. So the first thing I'm going to do is estimate how many grams I think they weigh. And you've got the table, I think it's still got a picture of a banana on it, in your work pack to use to fill in your estimates. So I'm going to start with the little strawberry, and I think I'm going to do it in multiples of 10. It's really hard not to cheat because I've got the scales in front of me here and I really want to just cheat. So I'm going to say 20 for the strawberry, 50 for the, I think that's a satsuma, it's not an orange. Now that apple is really big, it's a massive apple. I'm going to say 100 for the apple. The banana is not that big, maybe 80 for the banana. Now that pepper, you have to think carefully about that because it's completely hollow. If you cut a pepper in half, it's empty inside, it's full of air, whereas the apple is really solid inside. So although the pepper's the biggest, I don't think it's going to be as heavy as the apple. I'm going to say, I don't know, this is hard, isn't it? I've said the apple. I'm going to change my mind about the apple. I'm going to make the apple more. And then I'm going to say the pepper's going to be, let's put the pepper at 100. And let's put the apple at 150. So now I'm going to weigh them in the scales and see how close my estimates are. So these are the scales that I'm going to use. Now mine are a lot smaller than the school scales. And if you look, it says kilograms at the top. So the outside is the kilograms. Mine goes up in 50. So 50, 100, 150, 200, 250. It goes up to 500. And then all the way up there would be 1 kilogram. So if the scales went all the way round, something would weigh 1 kilogram. So I hope this is going to be close enough for us to see. So I'm going to start off with the strawberry. Put the strawberry in. Ooh, that's just sort of 10, 20 maybe? 20 for the strawberry. Let's try the orange or the satsuma. Oh, it's gone around a bit further now, hasn't it? So let's see, 50, 60, 70, 80 for the orange. I'll have a closer look at these in a minute. Let's try the pepper, which is quite big, but quite hollow. Oh my goodness, that's gone round a long way, hasn't it? So, oh, it's nearly on 200. So 150, 60, 70, 80, 180. Let's try the banana. Oh, that's almost exactly on. Let me just check around the other side. 150, I think that is. And last of all, the very large apple. So you can't cheat and just use my measurements because fruit are all different sizes. That's definitely the heaviest, isn't it? It's nearly at 250. Let's see, I think that's about 230. And now I'm going to find out how close my estimates were. Now I'm going to put my actual measurements next to my estimates to see how close they are. Remember, you're going to record this on the table that you've got in your pack with the little banana picture on it. So the strawberry was 20 grams. So that, I was completely correct with that estimate. The satsuma was 80 grams. So 50, 60, 70, 80, 30 away. That's not that bad. The pepper was 180, so that wasn't a very good guess, was it? 108. I was 80 grams away. That was quite a long way away with that, wasn't it? The banana was, oh my goodness, I'm getting worse. It was 150 grams. So 80, 50, 60, 70 away for that. So 80, 70. And the apple was 230 grams. So 50, 60, 70, 80 away with that. So not that great. Did I get them in the right order? I knew it was strawberry, then satsuma, then after that it was banana. So I did have them in the right order, even though my guesses weren't that great. These are the results from the Fruits from Handa's Surprise that we did last year. So the estimates were those for some of the children in the class, and then the weight is the actual weight when we weigh them. Remember, I said when you're making estimate, use multiples of 10. So use numbers that end in 0. If you haven't got any scales, you could record these into your table and then have a go at working out the differences. So if we look at the first one, they thought the banana was 150. It must have been a giant banana because it was 200. So the difference between 150 and 200 is 50 grams. So you might be able to work out some of the differences between your own estimates and what you've weighed. This one, the difference is 0 because we thought 300 and it was 300. This one, they thought it was 100, it was 50. So the difference is 50. And to check you've got the differences right, you can add or take away them. So 50 and 50 makes 100. 50 and 150 makes 200. This one was correct as well. So that's 0 difference. This one was another 50 difference. And this one was 300, 400, 500. This one was 200 away. And this one, 800, 900,000, that was 200 away. Also, if you haven't got scales, what you could do is look at some packets of things in your house, like packets of crisps, packets of cereal, and see if you can find the measurement of weight. And so maybe you could write that down. So look on your cereal box and then you could write down how much that is in grams, how much a packet of crisps is in grams. So if you haven't got any scales and you can't do that activity, have a look around and see if you can find any gram measurements on any packages.